Hanzade, Henry, do you write or not? Eski asked the ginger cat while she was struggling to get up from the bed. I try, but different to the dogs. I am a far-sighted person, replied Henry, scribbling on a piece of paper in the same way as every cat doing that. Henry, after all, you know that I will not do it, because I'm completely blind. At least once a day I crash against the door. Eski announced she was trying to get up, but unfortunately she couldn't. Everyone knows that, my dear. It also has its advantages, because it is possible to sleep next to you on the bed, and you do not grin your teeth, thinking that this is your beloved bear, Henry muttered under his breath. What did you say, Henry? Eski asked loudly, because she had heard badly. That you bump into the door because you mistake it for a wicket, Henry roared loudly in the ear of the doggy. That's true, memory is also broken, and living in the dark and moving by heart is not the most pleasant, said Eski with a slight sneer. We have to write down this story. Remember what Christmas was like after Morgan died? They were just arguing. This house is turning into a cafe, and besides, our master. Surely you see it? Oh yes, and I feel the same. We have this gift. We sense death long before it enters the house. Does it hurt? I wish Azrael would make me no longer hurt. I do not know. My dear Clementine died suddenly. Ah, your Clementine, the dog dreamed at the thought of the kitten. Take this pencil like a cat, she scolded the cat, hearing that it was playing with a pencil that was tapping on the floor. Everything changed with his death. He was the key. He was an angel sent from heaven indeed. When he disappeared, the saints stopped exuding this magnificent charm. Even the tree was so bald that you didn't want to jump on it. People say about those like us that they live like a dog with a cat, but we get along quite well. Henry became serious and took the pencil in his hand. I will write down your story and mine. 2007. I was born on February 26, 2007, a few days after the death of my Aunt Josephine. My mother's name was Diana, and I was lucky. I had no more siblings, I didn't have to compete with anyone for favors or food. However, her image is blurring for me now. Sometimes she visits me in my dreams. I was able to know my father better and spend more time with him. My father was famous all over Europe. He was an outstanding reproductor and hunting dog, but most of all, he was the last living brother of Josephine. This is what made me come to this family. I was going to live in my aunt's shadow forever. An aunt whom I never knew, but apparently I was very similar to her, and at the same time completely different. I was also to always be remembered as the daughter of the great Tsar II, son of Tsar I himself. Little was said about my mother in a harem, but I decided to make my name also be mentioned. After all, I was a Tsarevna, I was a princess. When I was 2 months old, to the time where my mother lived, a certain lady came and took me. The journey was long, and I was very scared. Mom was gone, and the images flashed through the glass. Late at night, we arrived to the land called Silesia. This lady wrapped me in a blanket and put it in a basket. For a long time I didn't want to get out of it, and when I stuck my head out, I saw 2 big dogs. One was brownish-white and the other was brown with a chest patch like mine. He was looking at me, watching me closely. Big ears dangled over his face. He sniffed me and then licked it. That big dog was my father, and this big female dog was my older sister. This very big dog was the legendary Tsar too, and I forgot to add that Josephine didn't like being alone. In the same year that she died, all her sisters passed away, including her closest friends, dogs Toffee and Max. My father died exactly on the anniversary of her death. It was then that the line, coming from the Czech Republic Tsar I finally expired. Tsar II lived in a large, beautiful house where practically everyone danced as he played, although human family members thought otherwise. My father was a Tsar in the full sense of the word. The house was surrounded by a large garden and forest, where we could run freely and do whatever we wanted. The sister looked at me rather downward and made sure that I was fine, and believe me, I had interesting ideas. My favorite game was to make slides of my father. I climbed on top of him as he lay in his lair, then turned and slid down his body. I could do this all day, and he stoically endured it and only smiled. Then, he seemed to me colossal, almost like a horse, but now, when I'm old, I grew up, and we have horses as neighbors. I don't think so. He was a great spirit. He looked at all his children with admiration and affection. However, we were confused. It was a really wonderful house. There was beautiful old furniture everywhere, but I remember best an old 19th century fireplace. We all liked to lie next to it, watch the magical movement of the flames and feel the warmth radiating from it. It was also there that I met my stepbrothers and sisters. Alcatraz and Aspen were roan dogs, and my brothers Alfredo and Al Capone were brown, like me. They always played together, and I preferred to be on the sidelines, but when it came to reading the newspapers, I always joined in. However, I preferred to play with my dad or sleep in peace under a tree. I didn't have to worry that they would forget about me. Dora always found me when it was time to eat. One day, strangers came. Everyone had been bustling since the morning, and then my siblings, guardians, came. Something was wrong. An older man with his wife and their adult daughter. Now I'm older than he was, but then it was completely different. He seemed older to me, but he was middle-aged. This is how I met Siegfried, Galena, and Kathleen for the first time in my life. He really wanted to play with me, but I didn't. I had a poor choice and little to say. After a formal dinner, they took me in their arms and packed me in the car. I was very scared. I squealed and tried with all my strength to get out, but it didn't help. Kathleen hugged me and said that everything would be fine. She promised me then that she would do anything so that I could meet my dad again. Somewhere after midnight, we stopped at a gas station. They dropped me off on the lawn. I wanted to run away, but found that I had nowhere to go. Big cars flashed past the road. We didn't get to the house, or actually the apartment on the second floor, until 3 in the morning. An elderly gentleman opened the door. You don't remember him. I'm sure that he loved me, but Morgan he loved the most. Mr. Richard. I don't think I fell out too well, as befits a family dog, because I ran to his room and the first thing I did was shit in the middle of the carpet, and then pee in the hall. I thought they would yell at me, but they weren't there. The old man smiled kindly, then leaned down to me with difficulty. He said, "You're so tiny. Let her rest. She is scared and tired. Let us go to sleep while it is still dark. You have been gone for a long time." There was a large Chinese carpet in the living room, which had been rolled up and hidden behind the table for my arrival. It immediately interested me. I was strong enough to untie the strings and bite out a piece. They say I was an awful, terribly difficult puppy. Well, I don't deny it. I quickly destroyed my first toys and a lair decorated with cute teddy bears. The only thing I saved was a piglet, which was the same size as me, although he had been injured in the nose, but Richard had repaired it. Piglet became my friend forever, but unlike me, he did not grow. I grew quite fast thanks to Richard, who every day minced half a calf for me and prepared dishes for me from this meat. It was from my father that I learned to ask for more for myself. I sat down evenly and made big eyes. I kept my eyes on someone until they finally felt sorry for me. This method has always worked. Now I don't even want to go to the fridge. My favorite thing was to sleep next to Kathleen, or on Richard's lap, or under his armpit. Poor Richard was scratched all the time by me because I kept getting on top of him. During those few months, he had both his hands plastered the whole time. I also loved to play with the washing, or actually tear clothes into pieces. Potted plants, as well, fascinate me. I didn't really care if they were poisonous or not. I had a stomach made of steel. That's true. What I didn't let me through what supposedly should have killed me. The truth is, I couldn't stay home alone. I had to be accompanied by at least 2 people. Why? Because one person cleaned up what I broke, and the other one caught what I threw from the wardrobe or chest of drawers. In short, the other man saved what I had just spoiled. I was jumping everywhere like a cat. Well, don't look like that. You met me when I was a stable lady. I didn't start leaving home until I was 4 months old, after all the vaccinations. At that time, Siegfried did not have any orders. He was the man who felt best in the forest and at home. Well, he did not read newspapers, he hated books and only occasionally looked at TV program. Siegfried was tormented at home, so to kill time a little at my expense, he would take me to the forest every day and take pictures. Out of boredom, he even made me a table on which he marked off what he taught me. Everyone laughed at the fact that he was acting like a semi-normal mad clerk. Not much has been checked there. In fact, I taught him more. I taught him patience in the Asian sense. It is from this period that I have the most beautiful photos. There was a beautiful meadow by the forest full of flowers, and I always loved flowers. Pick, sniff. I think everyone likes fairy tales when they are small. I also liked fairy tales. In fact, I liked it when someone read to me. I often studied with Kathleen. She was reading something out loud, and I was listening to it. I agree with her. Machiavelli wrote the truth about human nature, but to understand it you have to grow up. And humans hate the truth about themselves. They are more brutal than any animal. My favorite books were The Song of the Nibelungs, Ragnarok, or Obituaries. This literature made me fall asleep quickly. My family noticed this quickly and began to use it to put me in a trance and have a moment of respite. I wonder how his Gimli looks like. Yeah, I remembered every word of these fairy tales. I quickly began to prove that although I am physically similar to my aunt, I am myself. I am Eski Sarayi Beglerby. I was by no means interested in catching a hen that had escaped from someone's farm, but I was able to chase away a herd of cows in a meadow, and I managed to cheat one of them that happened to have a calf. I associated it with the taste of fresh milk. Finally, we only have one life, so enjoy it while you can. In fact, I was a bit like a calf by then. Galena nearly paid it off with a heart attack, but hardly anyone can chase the cows like buffalo on the prairie and raise such a cloud of dust at 5 months of age. You know, electricity kicked me too. When I was little, I liked to drive in a car just like Antonina. It meant under the seat. Later, I used to sit on the couch or in the trunk with my blanket and pillow. These cables were so colorful. They stuck out. They begged me to bite them. Nothing happened to me, but I damaged something, because one important light by the meter went crazy. Siegfried was angry, but he didn't say anything. While I was walking through the forest, I loved picking up branches. These were not just sticks, but huge branches. Since I had unrolled a 2-meter carpet, why not retrieve pieces of wood? The more that Siegfried liked to throw them to me. It was our game. He throws and I bring. In this game, however, we all forgot that I was teething at that time. For dogs, permanent teeth come out a bit differently than in humans. Milk teeth fall out and are replaced by permanent teeth, but full rooting takes place only when the milk teeth are completely removed, and until then, the new ones barely stick to the gums. Well, this is how I became jagged. An unrooted permanent tooth remained somewhere in the forest. When I was 5 months old, I met a cool spaniel named Hugo. I really enjoyed playing with him. He was probably my age or a little older. It was fun to tug at the hair on his head. We had both run in the corridor for so long that it was finally time to separate us. I slept off this meeting for 2 days. I wonder how long he slept off. During this period, dogs are ugly, as are some teenagers. It's not like that with cats, always so shapely. Those long, skinny legs, and after those legs, you are somewhere far away. You get so thin and disproportionate even though you eat in a few. It did not prevent me from running out of the doctor's office with the medical table to which I was tied by the leash so as not to fidget. How much can you sting a dog? It's barbaric. Vets. Now when I feel pain in my bones, I have changed my mind, and you know, no wonder that they spoke of me as the worst case and called God in vain when they saw me. We made it hard for them to work with Morgan as much as we could. We have always valued social distance. I also have to admit that when I was a puppy, I really liked eating soap. I don't know why, but I liked soap. Unfortunately, bubbles always popped out of my mouth at the end. When Kathleen was bathing too long, I would jump into the bathtub to play with her and always steal soap. I also liked to ride in or twist in the office chair. Unfortunately, I put part of the armchair through my stomach and then there were no more office armchairs in the house. When I was 6 months old, I visited the forest and meadows for the first time, those where my aunt hunted the most, as well as her grave. By then, I was much taller and heavier than she was, and the white socks on my feet began to fade. I weighed almost 30 kilos. This is where I hunted my first pheasants. According to tradition, Siegfried took the feathers from their tail and put them in a vase. They are waiting to decorate my head when I cross the Bifrost. He was proud of me, so proud. However, in November, during pheasant season, I caught a cold. I wanted to show him that I had been the best of all dogs, and, chasing a pheasant, I fell into the wetlands. Siegfried, like Siegfried, said that I would dry up. I was sure that I dried up, but I caught a runny nose, and Galina gave us a hunting barrier until the summer. I've always hated storms. People say a hunting dog shouldn't be afraid of fireworks and storms because they're the same sound. Maybe for their dull ears, but not for us. Siegfried was hunting, so we knew the sound of the shot very well, but the storm was something unbearable, and these flashes of light. Then I would always hide in the wardrobe or sit on Richard's lap. When I got older, he started to protest that he was not able to hold me that long because I was too heavy. We made a compromise and he would lie next to me while I tucked my head under his arm. When autumn was coming, we went to a dog show in some remote village, and my father's lady was there. I recognized her immediately, but she didn't want me to kiss her. My little brother looked like me but had much wider patches than me. How small was he? I think that a few months ago I looked like him. The brother was cute, and he wasn't afraid of me at all. But I didn't like his master. Then he helped Kathleen to arrange me for the show, but I think he misunderstood something, because he thought that she wanted to be in a relationship with him. He was by no means Kathleen's type, definitely not. He was a very unattractive man, even though he thought he was beautiful like an ancient god, and besides, getting pregnant was probably the most important thing for him, and he made money from my puppies. Kathleen guessed what was going on and broke off contact. To be honest, I didn't want to give birth to puppies for someone's earnings, and I decided that I would do my best to prevent that from happening. I didn't want to start a family and have kids at all. Fate played a trick on me. I should mention amazing horse that I know, and I am worried about him. His name was Mogilev. That name itself was symbolic and cursed. He was not lucky at all. He was a racing horse at the beginning and even won a few prizes. One day, the owner brought him to a rundown stable that was also a riding school and disappeared. The horse was confiscated against the debt. Fortunately, the owner of the stud was not one of those who believed that horses were suitable for slaughter and kept them, although he earned his living in a riding school. He had a fan page because everyone liked him, but suddenly the entries disappeared from it. Theoretically, he should still be alive, although he will be gone soon. He was 15 when we met. The new owner promised that Mogilev would never end up as meat, but they were people. He adored Kathleen. Whenever he heard the sound of our car's engine, he stopped like a marble statue, even if he had a rider who tried in vain to move him. Of course, if that human stayed in the saddle. The horse marched straight to our car and had to say hello. A wonderful stallion. Richard was also charmed by him. He was an Arab half-blood. In fact, if Richard had lived, he would have been with us, but Galina would have brainwashed him, instilling in her old age how dangerous a horse is. He wanted to ride him, but she gave such a lecture to her father that it was a miracle that the torrent of terrifying words did not break his spine. He did it while Galina was at the spa. It's funny that a family that fell by man on the way from Mogilev to Yekaterinburg met a horse with this name. Nobody remembers the name of their place anymore. It is rarely mentioned in historical books. This year I took part in the dogs show for the first time. Siegfried was commissioned and moved to the capital in the autumn. Our daily trips together have come to an end. Siegfried could not cook anything. His cooking could always kill anyone. He didn't care about the food. Oh, and sometimes he forgot to give us food. You know it very well. Anyway, there in the capital, he made for himself some wonderful paste with mayonnaise, egg, fish, onion, and mushrooms. The very thought makes you shiver. He lived on it for a week. After that, he spent more time in the bathroom than out of it. No, he was actually just there. That is why our journey to the city where the dog show was held was very long due to frequent stops, and it was not my fault. Unfortunately, when Siegfried was about to take a pill, he was indignant and it always ended with the same sentence, "And there I will take your inventions, Galina." Like that was even with the primitive pill for the diarrhea. Even me and Morgan were happy to take pills at once, but persuading Siegfried to take a pill was much more difficult than vaccinating us. Maybe the conditions of the building where there was a dog show helped. It was very primitive, the lack of toilets, and Siegfried changed his mind. He preferred, you know, not to shine in front of a crowd of people all the time. That day I met Andre, and I probably did not realize how much I would like him and be close to him. Did I like the shows? No. Maybe people like to rummage in their teeth and asses, but we don't. Choosing a partner, and I needn't tell you that, Henry? We are not concerned with appearance, but rather with the genes that our chosen one will pass on to future generations. We are interested in whether he is healthy and strong enough to be the leader of the herd and to protect us when the need arises. God gave us a Jacobson organ for this. People are only interested in appearances. They are vain and they get off badly. You have to look for beauty elsewhere. They said I was vain, but then Morgan wouldn't come to live with me. Exhibitions are good for people, but not for us. The problem is, we don't have much to say about it, but I've always known why God gave me teeth, and I didn't hesitate to use them. Keep the vets, judges, and other demons away. Christmas I didn't put as much stock in it as Morgan did, but I liked the time. My first Christmas tree did not stand for a long time, but fortunately they followed the advice of my Aunt Barbara and there were no glass toys on it, but straw ones. I could take them off, put them on, and rearrange them, and I really liked this. I just don't know why they shouted at me that this tree is not a toilet, it smelled like the woods. For the next few years, for the sake of the floor, gifts, and tree, we had Christmas tree and decorations made of plastic. I believe I should mention foraging for forest mushrooms. Well, Siegfried always prepped mushrooms with Kathleen for Christmas dishes. It was funny, but tiring because they had to bend down the whole time. I wanted to help them and take part in it too, but I preferred the red mushrooms more than the brown ones. It is true that Siegfried snatched it from my jaw in time, but I struggled so much so that I spent the whole night on the balcony in my puppy litter box. The next day, they took me to that monster, the vet. Injections and lots of pills, it helped. You see, Henry, when I was little, I also used the litter box, but don't tell other dogs that. As for me, I probably wasn't in the plans then, or I was, but I don't remember it. I know my father was a black male and my mother was an ordinary, typical tabby cat. It is said that cats are born ginger as it is the result of a mutation in the color gene. In fact, red-haired mammals are black. Apparently, red cats came to the continent with Vikings from Great Britain. These legendary pirates liked this unusual color so that they decided to bring us to their land. Another version says that the Vikings took us to Great Britain, and the rest of the story is about their expeditions, as well as monk exchanges. We are related to them anyway. It is said that it is rare for a ginger male to be born, more often are born females, but it's probably bullshit. Because all my children, both boys and girls, were like me. You see, you are special too. Is it? After all, you have a pedigree. So what, papers are not everything. You really think that every living thing can be reduced to a birth certificate? It's good for people, but not for us. Maybe if I hadn't had it, I would have suffered today. We both know Morgan was the most perfect of us all. Yes, Morgan.